Morning and welcome back to Mobility Matters. I'm your host, Javier Betancourt, Executive Director of the Citizens Independent Transportation Trust, or CITT. We're the quasi-independent agency of Miami-Dade County charged with overseeing our half-penny sales tax for transportation. You can learn more about the CITT on our website, miamidade.gov/CITT. I am so happy today to welcome not only a colleague, but honestly a friend who used to live down the street from me before his big move this year.
Yeah.
Juan Carbonell. Juan is the Senior Vice President with a company called Masabi, which I don't think a lot of people have heard about. And so this is a great opportunity to learn more, not only about you, but about this really interesting company. So Juan, welcome to the program.
Yeah, thank you so much, Javi. Thank you for having me here. Really appreciate it. Been excited to speak with you on, on video for quite a while now. So thanks for having me.
So what's Masabi?
Yeah, so a little bit more on Masabi. So Masabi is a full fare collection company, and you might think, what is full fare collection? Think of whenever you come onto a bus, a metro rail, etc. You've got to typically like fumble at a gate, try to find some cash, pull out a credit card, top up your smart card. The whole idea there is, you're capturing money, you're giving folks the right to basically travel. What Masabi does is we try to make that as seamless and as frictionless as possible. So we will provide technology that basically allows folks to tap their credit card or pay for that cash either on the vehicle or off the vehicle, just be able to transact, get through, and take your journey. So the whole idea is if you make it easier for folks to ride on that transit, they're going to come back for more. If there's someone who's thinking about, should I take an Uber or some other form of transit or take public transit, they're just going to be there ready to go. You can capture that rider and they can be on their way. So a lot of what we do is basically just helping agencies collect money for the services they provide and getting it back to them and as quickly as possible.
And ultimately providing a better experience for the transit rider.
Spot on.
Which will hopefully increase ridership, right? Because
Spot on.
It's one of the challenges we have in that space is, you know, a car is easy. You jump in, you might have to turn a key or these days push a button, takes you to where you are, and that's pretty much it. Transit requires a few additional steps. Each additional step, I guess dissuades people from perhaps using that as an alternative. So if we can make it easier for people to use it, more people use it. That's the idea.
Spot on. And it's also about meeting the customer where they are.
Right.
So for example, if they're using Google Maps to go ahead and plan a journey from A to B, how can you make it easy for them to buy their ticket right at that point where they're making a decision? And then they scan a QR code and they're taking transit. Other projects we've done with LA, over in LA Metro Los Angeles, is we have the ability to, when you buy a ticket for an event, you can also buy your public transit ticket at the same time. So at the point of decision, again, am I going to drive? Am I going to take an Uber? Oh, actually, I could just pay $3, take my public transit. I'm ready to go.
Right.
So the whole idea is if you can cast the net wide enough of when you get folks to decide, am I going to take transit or not? If you make it easy enough and modern enough for them to transact, in principle, you're going to get more transactions and you're going to get folks coming back for more.
Eliminating barriers. That's what it's all about.
That's right.
So where's Masabi headquartered?
So it's actually a UK company. Okay. It's got a really cool and funny story as to how it was founded. A lot of folks, when they hear Masabi, they're like, wait, are they saying wasabi? Is it a Japanese company?
That's how I remember it.
Yeah. And it happens a lot, So the name Masabi actually is kind of like a play on mobility wasabi. It's that kind of punch, that hit of, excitement and fun, as you're kind of taking mobility.
I assume there was a founder named Mr. Masabi, honestly. So
no, that would be a way easier story. So basically, there was 3 founders of the company, and this was back in about like early 2000s. And they had just come back from a concert. They actually missed the concert at the start of the concert because they couldn't catch transit at the right time. Okay. They decided they were so late, they had foregone the concert. They went out for food, like Japanese food. And as they were sitting around, they were saying, how could we like use tech? Evolving cell phone technology, because back then that was like getting onto the internet was a big deal on your phone. They're like, how can we use this tech that's in everyone's pocket to make it easier for folks to take transit? And so they were looking around. They had this idea of basically bringing like QR codes into a mobile phone. This is well before COVID, right? So, and as they were eating their food, they're like, they put some wasabi on their food. They got that hit, and they're joking around. They're like, what if we called it Masabi? And like here we are 20 years later with the company name Masabi, and it is a hit of mobility, right? It's like getting people excited about taking transit, making easy, frictionless, reducing boundaries, getting on board.
And so it's a UK company. Where is it being applied in the US? Is it here in Miami or South Florida yet?
Great question. So we have about 160 customers all around the world, from Australia to the UK, Europe, all the way through to the United States. Some of our biggest customers here in the US are Denver, the likes of Pittsburgh, the likes of, we have, Los Angeles, as I mentioned before. We run rail services for New York, the MTA, as well as Boston and BTA, the commuter rail services there. So here in Florida, there's one agency, which I'm forgetting about. We have one small agency out here, but we're looking to continue expanding down here, and we're, excited to do further business here in Miami.
So you're Miami based.
Yeah.
So how did you end up with Masabi?
Yeah, well.
And then tell us, and by the way, tell me about your background. I know you've worked in a number of other places in kind of this transit space.
Yeah.
And then we'll talk about where you lived a little further down the line.
Yeah, so I have been in transit now for about 15 years. I fell into transit. A lot of folks that work in transit and make a career out of it fall into transit. I don't think there's a lot of folks that have decided they want to do transit when they were in college. Hopefully that changes over time. But I was born and raised in Miami. I left after graduating from University of Miami to London. Spent 5 years there. I fell in love with what a transit system can be when you scale it right, when it's funded right. When
the old London Tube.
Yeah, exactly. When it's frequent, when it's timely. And, I got the travel bug. So I then went to Australia, and I was picked up by Transport for New South Wales, a major agency out there. About 35,000 people work there. So it's pretty much got every mode of transit you can think of under their belt. And I got the travel bug. So I've been in transit for 15 years, started very much as an IT nerd, like doing network engineering and patching, and then slowly made my way into project management. Started getting the excitement of, thinking of projects that were making the lives of citizens better and riders better. And I got the bug. And then I wanted to keep working around that and getting further and further into that like idea place of transit. Like, how can I take a crazy idea like integrating autonomous vehicles to events, to public transit, and then creating simple solutions that folks could take that could change the face of how we move around cities. So my whole career has been dedicated to finding novel and creative ways of using technology to help people move more efficiently.
Yeah. And we're and I was just speaking to John Rossant with Commotion about this, but I feel like we're in the late 1800s, early 1900s, where there's a lot of innovation and a lot of excitement around transforming how we move, right? Mobility and transportation. And whether it's through technology or other innovative solutions, it's just an exciting time to be in this space, right? It's moving very quickly.
Yeah.
And you're right in the center of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's exciting, it's daunting, it's scary, it's overwhelming, right? It's all those things. So I think the key things we're seeing now is autonomous technology is just making its way out there, right? We have AI that's starting to do stuff without human interaction in ways that we just could never do before. The manufacturing around the world has just gotten so good at like creating sensors that can teach computers on how to drive without hurting people, and those kinds of elements. And then there's just a lot of available technology in people's pockets and a lot of computing power in people's pockets. And you bring all those things together, you've got data, you've got decision making, you've got like hardware that pulls the reality of the situation into like a model, a calculation. And just use your imagination, right? There's so much more that's going to happen in the next 10, 15 years. So it is almost like a new industrial revolution in technology. And, having worked in tech and transit for a long time, I'm always trying to find ways of bringing technology and consumerization, that kind of like, all the stuff we're seeing with the internet and other kind of services, trying to bring that into transit as quickly as possible. And it's an interesting prospect because governments, they're risk averse, right? They're utility based, they're kind of utility outcome focused. There's a lot of procurement and regulation in place to, make sure that things are being procured in a clean, safe, and efficient manner. But that means a lot of times that innovation and kind of long procurement cycles, they conflict quite a bit. So I'm also in the space of trying to find creative ways to help governments help themselves, to then start moving the needle when it comes to this innovation a lot quicker, right? So
we appreciate it. We need the help, John.
Yeah, it's a very complex space to be in, but it's fun.
Yeah.
So if you're a problem solver, if you really love the rider, if you really love what you do, like every day is a fun day, right? So I think that's why you and I, when we talked about transit, when we first met, we just kind of clicked.
Yeah.
There's so much to transit to love. There's so much room for growth and for change. All we got to do is just foster people through the journey, make sure we're focused on the outcome, the best outcome for the city, for the rider, for the agency and government, and the rest just falls in place.
And it's transformative, right? And this working on transportation and mobility as an urban planner, the reason I'm passionate about it is I know that is the key to transforming a city. And I love Miami. We have this sense of pride being Miamians, but also frustration I think we share because we know its potential. And it can be frustrating that, especially in terms of transit and bicycle pedestrian mobility, I would add, we're far behind where we should be and where our peers are, right? And so through technology, through innovation, maybe that can help us catch up.
Yeah, agreed. And I've been a part of cities that have basically just decided like it's time that we make a change.
Yeah.
And it takes a strong leader, and it takes, it takes a lot of political will and process to get through it. But, when I was in Sydney, and this was about like 2007, around 2009, when I was working in government, we had a very strong, effectively like governor that had come in and said, I want the customer to be at the center of everything we do. And I want all of our policies, all of our strategies, all of our procurements and purchases to reflect a better experience for the rider. And we don't know what we're doing beyond 3 years from now, but that's okay. Like, we're going to start working in these 3 to 5 year cycles. We're going to have ambitions and plans, and we're going to strive towards that. And that ethos was brought into the room in every meeting. We started meetings talking about, does this really reflect what the customer needs? What problems are we solving? Is this the best use of taxpayer dollars? And it took about 6-7 years, but you start seeing that change, right? And we often forget, because of our day jobs, that mobility is freedom. Mobility is a way of life for folks. Like, when I am with my, my grandparents or some elderly family members, and you see that they just can't get out to see friends, you realize what an impact it has on people's lives. And that's what motivates me the most, is knowing that if we get it right, if we can help people get out of their homes, they live happier lives. They give more back to society.
And it's about opportunity. It's getting you to school. It's getting you to your jobs, right? It's getting you to services, critical services. So it's just the heart of everything we do.
Agreed, right? And so I think it takes that spark, that need, and hey, the World Cup could be a good, compounding event to make some of that happen. And I'm hearing a lot more dialogue and consideration on how do you handle a mega event, and what do you learn from that, and how do you bring that into like the day-to-days. So I'm excited to see what that does for our city, and to see the will of the rider be reflected more and more in our decisions.
Yeah, when I was doing my master's thesis with my planning degree, it was around bringing the Olympics to Miami. Yeah, and I could care less about the Olympics, but to me, it was in order to drive all these major infrastructure improvements, because it's nothing like bringing, and LA is learning this, right? Yeah. Nothing like bringing an event of that size to your city to suddenly wake you up and say, hey, we got a deadline we have to meet. We need to make these investments, to cut through all the BS, right? Yeah.
And so, bringing up the Olympics. So Sydney had the Olympics in 2000. Yeah. And I saw the remnants of that. Like, what happens 5 years later? The stadiums that were put up there, they were still being utilized for concerts, for major events, for like farm shows and stuff like that, kids shows. The infrastructure that was put in place, the rail extensions that, that went to those stadiums and locations around the city, the bus rapid transit ways that were put in, they all continued to sustain growth. And by the time I was leaving there in 2022, there were huge growth centers for the city because they had all the right transit infrastructure. Right. So even from an urban planning perspective, as you highlighted, like just having a compounding event like that where there's a lot of money thrown at a situation, it just creates the right bones for continued city growth. Yeah. Right. Better movement of people and folks. So would love to see the Olympics come to Miami. I cannot imagine what a traffic problem that would be for us.
Which is why we would need to build out our transit system. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. So hopefully, let's campaign together for the Olympics in Miami 2030.
Might have to do a spring Olympics or fall Olympics. I don't know about a summer Olympics here. A winter would be fun.
It'd be a very, very complex engineering feat, but it could
be a whole different type of skiing. So you've mentioned Australia a couple of times, and I know you spent a number of years there. So tell us about your time in Australia, and what is it that Australia is kind of on the forefront of? Because it seems like they're doing a lot of innovative things.
Yeah, so great question. It is a big, small country. So it is the landmass of the United States with about 1/10 of the population. There's about 26 million people that live
all
there.
On the coast, right? The center is kind of empty.
Yeah, the center is all red, outback, right? Like red, classic desert. There's still folks that live out there, but they're like low density, like small population kind of cities and townships. It's the second richest country in the world per capita.
Really?
So, and it's probably the second or first most connected civilization, so to speak, in the world so far in terms of having cell phone connectivity. Everyone's banked, or most people are banked. So it creates a really interesting dynamic for like next gen technology. Like if you can get everyone banked and they're all connected via cell phones, how can you start doing more with what's in your pocket and then connecting that into those live services that are in the field? So what I saw a lot of in Australia is a handful of things. It's more European style transit. So there's pretty much every mode you can think of, from ferry to light rail to heavy rail to bus, etc. On-demand transit, paratransit, these kind of elements. It is very socially acceptable and expected that you would take transit where you go.
Right.
So the government feels a heavier obligation to make sure that the services are, designed right and available and timely. It is to own a car there. This is quite interesting. To own a car there, every car is taxed 50%. Ooh. There's a luxury tax that's added to cars, right? So it really does become you get something very small and cheap and cheerful and European, or you just find the way to take transit, and the time penalty for taking transit is typically not that great of a gap. It's like 10% more time or 25% more time than driving directly somewhere.
And is there something about you think culturally about Australia that kind of also helps to drive innovation and some of these alternative modes?
Yeah, so I think there is more of a like a group consciousness in Australia. There is more of we've got to protect our environment and our cities. There is because transit's so good, there's also just I want my time back.
Yeah.
I don't want to spend 2 hours a day stuck in traffic. Like, I'm happy to take a bus.
Work-life balance over there, from what I understand.
The work-life balance is great. Some examples and stories that I saw when I was there is, 3 o'clock on a Friday, on the average Friday, they would kick you out of the office and say, like, it's Friday, get out there, go for a surf.
Oh, nice.
Right, enjoy time with your friends, right? So, you weren't expected to do a lot of weekend work or late work. They tried to find the right amount of hiring of folks to be able to, to give you that proper work-life balance. So there's so much there that is life-driven, not like work-driven. And because it is more European-minded, there's good investment in infrastructure. There is like a large amount of services that are in the field. Weekend services, nighttime services. You're never really left stranded. Even in the regions, you're not left stranded. So what I learned from that was just managing a network of that size. The complexity of that size is phenomenal. The planning cycles there are multi-year planning cycles. Like in the United States, if you want to build any new infrastructure, buying those corridors, like laying out those corridors, community consultation, those things take years, and your plans go from A to B very quick, area to C really quickly. As you're kind of doing community consultation, you're changing like $16 billion programs and highways to go around a kid's school. You're putting up spires for exhaust in these kind of tunnels in different locations because of politics and other considerations. So you learn a lot about complex infrastructure projects and how to just really, really keep it simple for folks to engage. So, things like wayfinding, like keeping the signs really, really simple, or like choosing what bus numbers go what direction and what part of the city, so that folks, no matter where you are, you can see a bus number, you see the color of that route, exactly which way it's going. So that was done very, very simplified. A lot of technology enablement there. So, using apps to get from A to B, paying with that app, knowing how crowded your rail carriages were before you got on there, so you can choose cart 3 instead of cart 6. So much went into like just making it really clean and seamless for the rider to get on board. And then people loved it, right? Even during COVID, like numbers were okay. Folks kept moving around. They were very safe during that time. And like, it's a great world-class system.
Sounds like you had a great life in Australia. I know you found love there and started raising a family there, and yet at some point you decided to move back to Miami. What's behind that?
The pull of family. Yeah. So my parents were getting older, and we felt an obligation to be with them, through the hard times and the good times. Mm-hmm. So we did want to come back for the last God knows how many years, 5, 10, 20 years of being with family. And it's been a really fun experience bringing a Aussie girl, from the northern part of Sydney.
Bit of culture shock.
Who's never lived in a different part of the world as long as she has here for the last few years, bringing her to Miami, which is, of course, such a melting pot of cultures, right? It's such a different contrast to the way that you can imagine Australia and Sydney life would be. So there's a book in the future that's going to be written on from her side, on the contrast of lifestyles. But, I love being back in Miami. It's changed so much since 2004 when I first left. It's taller, it's crowded, it's busier, it's more expensive. Yeah. There's so much that us as folks that service the government can do to, again, just remember what the day-to-day life of, the average person is trying to get around the city, and how we can really better impact the experience that we create for them in the field.
So, like you, I went away, not for as long or as far. I went to DC. Never thought I'd be back in Miami, but then you feel that pull to come back. Yeah. And even in the time I was gone, I saw, a major transformation. I'm sure you saw even a greater transformation. But what I see in Miami now that wasn't the case, at least when I left originally, it's a sense of pride.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of people our age who were kind of born here are now committed to making this city, the world-class city we all know it can be and should be. We say it is now. I disagree with that. You cannot call yourself a world-class city until you have a world-class transit system, and we're certainly not there, right?
I agree, right? So, and it's about it's about having an available system that is easy to use, that is widely accessible outside of downtown. I mean, downtown is great. It's very well connected. You get it. You can get around. But outside of downtown, like how everything connects or the frequency of these services, right? It really impacts folks as to how long the alternative journey time takes, taking a car trip versus public transit. And that time difference between both of those options is very, just difficult and complicated for folks to have to sit in the hot heat and wait for that bus journey and get on their way. So I do agree that, finding ways to expand or increase the frequency of our bus network would be a huge boon to the city. Finding creative ways to create the heavy rail infrastructure that we can use to not only go north to south into downtown, but ideally east to west in key corridors would be a huge boon for the city. I mean, it's a political hot potato, I imagine, going there, but like it all starts with a dream, right? And it all starts with a request for funding to make it happen. So,
and that ultimately is the key, right? I would say for the first time in a long time, we're all kind of aligned politically in government that this is the solution and the way forward. It used to be just a few short years ago, people were still saying transit, that's liberal nonsense, and cars, no one's ever going to get out of the cars. We have to just keep building roadways. But I don't know of a single elected official that feels that way anymore. I mean, I think everyone is committed to transit, so that's important. We're in alignment. What's missing is the funding, right? Obviously the half penny isn't nearly enough to meet all of our needs. There are challenges at the federal and state level. So it's all about now even exploring public-private partnerships and other innovative solutions. So let's get away from that for a second and talk about APTA. So you are one of the smartest, most passionate people in the transit space that I know of. And I'm not the only one that thinks that. Apparently APTA, the American Public Transportation Association, I think I got that right, feels the same because they allowed you into this very selective group of potential leaders, I should say, not potential leaders. And that's APTA Leadership, I believe it's called.
Yeah, it's called Leadership APTA.
Leadership APTA.
So it's a program that goes over like 5, if you want to call it like on-site visits or on-site kind of like conferences with typically about 35 of select leaders from within the kind of the APTA or the public transit space within North America. So several hundred folks every year apply for this very prestigious, very kind of like fortunate, group of folks that, and they're taking you through a series of workshops to help you grow as a leader. So Leadership APTA is, it takes course over the year. You meet up in places like Washington, D.C. or like San Francisco, and you cover things like, ensuring that when you go out to market to procure that you're asking the right questions to the market and you're setting up the right process so that it's fair and qualified, and of course you can procure against. Or how do you manage conflict and negotiation, or how do you better work with unions to make sure that your services aren't interrupted with unplanned considerations. So I actually, funny enough, I applied 2 years ago, maybe even 3 years ago. You're always so nervous applying for these things. I didn't know if I was actually going to have the opportunity to make it in. I was accepted. I decided at that point in time to switch roles, and they're like, hey, good on you for switching roles. Can you just give it another year and apply again next year? So then I applied again this year. I was very lucky to get in. And it's been such a refreshing, just like association and cohort of folks. Like you're dealing with CFOs and CEOs and all different kinds of directors, and you've
public and private, right?
Public and private. Yeah. And it just gives you a voice. Like you realize that you're not alone in terms of trying to get stuff done and the walls that people have to break through to get stuff done. As you know, we just had
a bit of group therapy.
It's a lot of group therapy. It's a lot of like communal learning. You can see how, and this program's been going on for almost like 25, 30 years. You can see how it really has seeded a lot of folks with connections and of course with knowledge on how to best, grow their agencies and represent their agencies and represent their riders. So, for anyone who's considering going for Leadership APTA, read more about it. It's on the American Public Transit Association website. Read more about it. Definitely throw your hat in the ring. It is really a career-changing opportunity, both in terms of like networking, but also in terms of all the great content you learn there as well.
That's great. I'll have to explore it. So I'm going to give a shout out to Leadership Florida. So much the same experience, but kind of broader than just transit. But that sounds like a great opportunity.
So I'll be applying there next year.
Yeah. Leadership Florida. Look out for this guy. So listen, Juan, thank you for being on the program. Unfortunately, we're out of time.
Thank you.
I know we can cover a lot more and look forward to having you back on at some point.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for everything you do and for the passion you bring to it. I mean, honestly, I have not met anyone who's more passionate about this subject than you, and you articulate it well, and you're living the dream.
I appreciate it.
So thank you, folks. That's all the time we have here on Mobility Matters. Please join us here every other Thursday from 9:30 to 10:30. Have a lineup of amazing guests lined up for you to enjoy and to learn from. As always, again, please visit our website for more information about us, miamidade.gov/CITT. And finally, as always, I also like to thank our partners in this endeavor, Miami's community newspapers, for hosting and producing the program. See you next time.